Hello, everybody, and welcome to the May 22nd, 2018 edition of the Ephrom Josine Show. I am your host, Ephrom Josine. First off, in Oklahoma, GOP candidate running for governor apparently posted on Facebook about the benefits of euthanizing poor and disabled people. In case you're wondering, that man is Republican candidate Christopher Barnett, who was talking about welfare on Facebook when the conversation took a rather interesting turn. Somebody pointed out that many of them are disabled or elderly people who can't work, and here's what he had to say. The ones who are disabled and can't work, why are we required to keep them? Sorry, but euthanasia is cheaper and doesn't make everyone a slave to the government. Yeah, having the government choose when your life ends is totally not making you a slave to the government. Now, later he claimed that it was simply due to a hacker. However, that seems odd considering how he later called the interaction a fun one on that same Facebook page. It seems more than likely it was either a staffer or him himself, and if that's the case, may I ask, can I just say, the problem is that we even need to discuss why this was going to happen in the first place? Like, if this appeared on Bernie Sanders' Facebook page, or even a more moderate left Facebook page, someone like Chuck Schumer, we wouldn't have to debate, did they seriously just say we should euthanize poor people? But that's what the Republican Party has sunk to, and it is truly awful. It is truly awful. Now, as many of you know, there was a mass shooting that took place on Friday. One the right wing seems to not only be trying to redact, but to also keep other media outlets from reporting on. Considering how they are now saying that a shooter's face shouldn't be shown, that his name shouldn't be said, that they essentially just shouldn't cover it. Which is a genius solution, just ignore a problem and it goes away. However, it seems to be a little bit more complicated. So, Dr. NRA President and committer of treason, Oliver North, says he knows the answer. It's actually ADHD drugs like Ritalin, even though he admits he's certainly not a doctor. Now, to be fair, North knows a thing or two. For instance, those death squads he funded in the 1980s, all of them were on Ritalin. You didn't know that? Well, good, because I just made it up. Here's some of what he said. The NRA for over 2 years has been advocating a program called School Shield, North explained. If School Shield had been put in place in Santa Fe High School, it's far less likely that it would have happened. Essentially, ever since Sandy Hook, they've been asking for more guns in schools, which, on a side note, doesn't even make any sense. So you're going to give the teachers guns, and mind you, I don't know about you, but at least at this point, once a month, I see a story of a teacher sexually abusing a student. My first thought is always, man, if only they had a firearm. The problem we've got is we're trying to, like the Dickens, oh, come on, North, you're only 50. Why do you have to act so old to treat the symptoms, not treating the disease? And the disease in this case isn't the Second Amendment. The disease is the youngsters who are steepened, is that steepened or steepened? In a culture of violence. They've been drugged in many cases. Nearly all of these perpetuals are male, and they're young teenagers in most cases. Okay, so it's not the Second Amendment's fault, it's medical science's fault, because we've determined that this thing, Oliver North, who is the president of the NRA, may I remind you, and was, give me a sec. He was one of the main defense experts for President Reagan. He had a show on Fox News for years where he talked about, I'm such a war hero. He's essentially gone to the logic of a 16-year-old who doesn't need that medication because there's nothing wrong with them and it's all society's fault. You know, he's gone to the level of some of the most ridiculous people like Matt Walsh or the anti-vaxxers. Heck, I guarantee you, if this was the 2000s, North would have been saying it's those vaccines' fault. They gave the kids autism, and then those kids decided to kill a bunch of people. Okay, this is a direct quote from the article. According to North, violence is commonplace in the culture of teens, and this is from North himself. All we need to do is turn on a TV, go to a movie. Many of these young boys have been on Ritalin since they were in kindergarten. Again, what's his deal with Ritalin specifically? Like, there are other ADHD medications out there other than just Ritalin. But, you know what? I'll give you this. I will give you this. Everyone is different. That particular form of ADHD medication is not for everyone who has ADHD. In fact, some have tried it and it just doesn't work for them. It's really just the cheapest version of the medicine. Now, mind you, if more people could afford other better medicines, that'd be great, but okay. But for that matter, let's go back to the violence point. When he was in the military, and there is no one who glorifies violence more than the United States military. That is literally their job. And he served in Vietnam, which is widely considered just to be violence for violence sake by basically anyone who studied the war. I know it's a little bit more complex than that. I'm breaking it down to a couple sentences. That's basically what the majority of people consider it. But even then, let's actually look at what he's saying. Because what he's saying there is, it's not the Second Amendment's fault, it's the First Amendment's. Because maybe if you couldn't turn on the TV and you couldn't see people getting punched in the face or anything, that wouldn't be an issue. And on a side note, does he really think there hasn't been violence on TV long before all this started? I mean, football, most sports are decently violent. You know, people tackling each other, people kicking each other. And old men of his day were going, oh, all this football, it's just too much. And people actually imitate that too. There are leagues in basically every high school for most sports out there. And that's not the fault. That's not the culture of violence Oliver North is talking about. Or for that matter, does this guy just think we didn't have any serial killers until the 1960s? Adolf Hitler and Joseph Stalin were both brutal leaders. And when both of them were alive, I think it was, assuming TV was even common enough for FCC regulations to really apply, there were actually regulations that said that if you showed a couple's room, you could not have them sleep in the same bed. Because that implied they had sex at some point. And that was not allowed. Just... wow. I would like to end by saying this. The segment went a little bit longer than I intended. I originally had a few more things I'd like to cover, but I'll just cut it short here. I am a firm believer that if a medical doctor says there is something wrong with you and that medication can fix it, it is much better for you to take that medication than to trust the word of, in this case, a literal traitor, and the president of the NRA, who admits he has no medical experience. Because, brr. So, here's the thing, and I am a firm defender of that, and I will be a firm defender of that. I haven't really got the opportunity to defend it as much as I have other things, but I hate anti-vaccine nonsense. I hate medication nonsense and all that. I hate basically every form of alternative medicine, and just everything Oliver North says here is wrong. It's that simple. And in my mind, he should either have to put an even larger disclaimer saying before every segment that he talks about any sort of medicine that he is in fact not a doctor, and that Fox should have not a doctor under his name in the first place. And this applies to anyone, by the way, no matter what their view is. But he should also be forced to have some amount of facts to back it up. There is not a single study that links Ritalin to violence. It's that simple. I'm Ephrom, and good night.